In this video, we are looking at words again. We are looking at what we know when we know a word. As we have seen, it's not easy to define what a word is, and so Leonard Bloomfield came up with a different term. He realized that it's important to distinguish between meaningful forms that can stand on their own, minimal free forms, and forms that cannot stand on their own. Let's define a minimal free form as the smallest meaningful unit of speech that can stand by itself. Now, in a previous video, we talked about the fact that we can come up with new words. And sometimes we have to create new words because we need to refer to new things that don't have a name yet. There are a number of ways in which we can go about doing this. So the mechanical duck that Jacques Vaucanson invented could have been named a ductor, a mechaduck, or an automaducaton. Those word creations are a conscious effort. You've got to think and be creative. But once you've created a new word, it will sink into your knowledge of English, that knowledge that you're not aware of. And then you'll be able to treat it like any other word of English. And that's what we're going to look at now. What is it that we know about words? How do we form new words without conscious effort? Let's look at some examples. Here's a poem by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all, and so on. How many words are in this poem? Well, we can just count the forms that are separated by spaces. But now, remember, for something to count as a word, there are two conditions that have to be met. It has to be meaningful, and it has to be able to stand on its own. Why did we add that condition that it has to be able to stand on its own? What happens if we just say the smallest meaningful unit of speech, without the requirement that it can stand by itself? Here's what happens. Some words seem to be made up of more than one meaningful unit. And crucially, these little units here cannot stand by themselves. So we can classify smallest meaningful units into some that can stand on their own and some that cannot. We need a new term, and that term is the morpheme. It is defined as the smallest meaningful unit of language, and it comes in two forms: free morphemes and bound morphemes. So now we don't really need to talk about words anymore. We've just introduced a better concept, the morpheme. So let's investigate it some more. What is the meaning of these smaller units that can't stand on their own? What is the meaning of these morphemes? We'll start with just one, the S, as in feathers and words. You'll have to figure out the rest on your own. So, what does this S mean? It means plural. So if there's only one, we say feather. And if there's more than one, we say feathers. At least most of the time, we add an S. And even if you've never heard a word before, like automaducaton, you will know its plural form, even if you think you're not good with words. So if there is a plurality of automaducatons, you'll add the S, as in automaducatons. So when you know English, you know how to form the plural of automaducaton. The plural morpheme S is already in your unconscious knowledge. And the rules for combining S with words, any word, are also part of that knowledge. In this respect, new words behave just like existing words. We know how to add the plural S. The S is a meaningful unit. Its sound is S and its meaning is plural. But it cannot stand on its own. You can't just say, I saw duck, meaning I saw a plurality of ducks. You will have to attach it to the end of the noun you want to pluralize. So, here we are. While ducks is the smallest meaningful unit that can stand on its own, it itself consists of two smaller units of meaning, two morphemes, each with its own sound and meaning. Duck means duck. It's also a word because it has a meaning and it can stand on its own. And S means plural, but it cannot stand on its own. It is a bound morpheme. Now we can further classify bound morphemes by the position they take in a word, either at the end, like the plural S in ducks, or at the beginning, like un in undo, or in the middle, like the fucking in California. Note that we use hyphens to indicate where a morpheme attaches. As usual, we have some terms for these different forms. When you put a morpheme at the end, it's called a suffix. When you put it at the beginning, it's a prefix. And when you put it in the middle, it's an infix. And all of these fixes together are called affixes. But we're still not done with analyzing our plural morpheme S yet. So far, we've identified the sound associated with the plural meaning as S, the voiceless alveolar sibilant fricative. S. Now that's true for ducks. But consider now some other words. For example, the plural of dog is dogs. And here, the alveolar sibilant fricative is voiced, as in z, dogs. And the plural of house is houses. Here there's a schwa that's part of the plural S. So we have here a situation where there is one meaning, plural, but several different ways of saying that meaning. S, z, and us. So is this one morpheme or three? Well, to answer this question, consider what you know about the use of these three morphemes. And here we're talking about our unconscious knowledge again. You couldn't say ducks, dogges, house. You have to say it like this. So the three different ways of saying plural are in complementary distribution. S cannot be where z or s is because they are the same morpheme. We have one morpheme and three allomorphs of that same plural morpheme, s, z, and s. And the use of these allomorphs is dependent on how the noun that you want to pluralize ends. If it ends in s, like house, you'll add the schwa. If it ends in a voiced consonant, it is voiced, z. And if it ends in a voiceless consonant, the plural allomorph we use is the voiceless s. You know this even if you don't know the word that you're pluralizing. As you can see, if you make up some new words like mecaducks, ductors, and valses, you couldn't say it any other way. Now these three allomorphs are not the only allomorphs of the plural in English. Here's just a few more examples. Ox becomes oxen and mouse becomes mice. The allomorphs associated with a morpheme can be dependent on the phonology of the word that they attach to. We call this phonologically conditioned allomorphs. And then we have also lexically conditioned allomorphs. Those depend on the word itself. So what you need to know now is that allomorphs are the surface realization of a morpheme, while morphemes are the things that you know when you know the morphemes. They are the smallest meaningful unit of a language. Now here's your challenge. What are the properties of the other bound morphemes in this poem?